Hardware's 2.5 Geeks is brought to you by Gigabyte's AMD X570 AORUS motherboards for third-generation AMD Ryzen 3000 processors. Hit the link in the description below for more details. In this episode of Hot Hardware's 2.5 Geeks, we'll have beefy, badass SSDs, reasonably priced Galaxy S10es, HP's 65-inch monster gaming TV, and some retro gaming goodness too. Next. And welcome back to yet another episode of Hot Hardware's 2.5 Geeks, where this show we will probably revert to we two geeks or a couple of geeks or something, because it's only me and Marco today. We got our geek on, but there's only two of us holding down the fort currently at this juncture. How you doing today, Marco? How's things?
I'm doing well. I cannot complain. It's a little warm over here in the Connecticut lab, but kids are behaving. Weather's beautiful. Dog's behaving. Got an article done, so good stuff today.
You did. You've been productive. It's always good when things are productive. Yes.
Yes.
I'm a little afraid today. Been scrambling. Lots of multitasking going on, shifting gears from one domain to the other, whether it be working with the good OEMs that we deal with, or sort of housekeeping stuff, just all over the map, and hard to focus, but we will prevail for sure. And we're without Chris today. We're without Paul today, either of the two other knuckleheads that we typically have on the show. But we decided to go it alone because it's been a little while. We're also at a different time slot than normal. We mixed it up on you yet again, the 4 o'clock time slot here. Usually we're Wednesdays at 7, but we're going to actually try and pull it in a little bit earlier, I think. And we will notify everybody on that as well. But some interesting stuff. How's your workload been lately, buddy? You're gearing up in the labs for all kinds of testing, I imagine, right about now.
Yes, it's been a little nuts. So I had a bunch of SSDs show up, some unannounced and some they were intriguing. So I said, yeah, let me take them on. And with perhaps some impending CPU launch coming, it would require me redoing all the test beds because I want to make sure we're using the latest firmware and OS updates. But I had to test the SSDs completely first because that's where I had all my reference data was on an existing platform. So I burned through 7 SSDs the last few days. And now next to me over there is a CPU test bed running some fresh tests in preparation for something that's coming soon. And then right after that, I have to jump into a whole bunch of new GPUs. So it is going to be an exciting couple of weeks.
A little something is coming. That's all you can say, huh?
A lot of something from lots of somethings.
Yes, 'tis getting busy. For sure. Which is the way we like it. But lots of stuff afoot, as many of the viewers are probably aware. Obviously, AMD is they're locked and loaded with their third generation Ryzen Zen 2 processor, Ryzen 3000 series. So we can't say when and where, but you know all about it already, or at least the pertinent details. We'll be showing you how it performs in the days and weeks ahead, and that's about all we can say. Cool stuff to be playing with all new tech, right, buddy? That's what we live for.
Very cool stuff. It is definitely exciting to be a PC geek again. Lots of good stuff.
And it's exciting to be the birthday boy. Happy birthday, brother, man.
Thank you very much. Today. It is. I'm 17 today.
Beautiful.
Almost an adult. I'm getting there.
I'll be the elder statesman at 27. Is that okay? Does that work?
Perfect. Yeah. You don't like a day over 26.
Appreciate that. You're too kind. Well, yes, happy birthday, and thanks for joining me on when there's only two of us. I mean, I'm not sure I could do this gig alone, so I appreciate you taking your birthday late here near Beer 30 when you're probably looking to embark on some festivities. So thanks for that. And with that, let's have no further ado, shall we? Because we should dive right in and get going on the good stuff here. You just got through launching this article today. You smart guy, you. Samsung's SSD 970 EVO Plus 2 terabyte review. Burly, speedy NVMe storage. Burly and badass, I would call it. This is a very popular line of SSDs, and now we've got the biggest, honkinest capacity version of it. What do you know, buddy? Good stuff here for sure from the folks at Samsung.
Yeah, absolutely. So the SSD 970 EVO Plus series, the first wave of drives hit in, I believe it was late January. Samsung, in that initial announcement, they did announce the 2 terabyte model, but it was supposed to come later in Q1. So it took a little bit longer, obviously, but the 2 terabyte drive has shown up. It is based on the same Phoenix controller as all of the other drives in the lineup. But what makes this one just a little bit different is it has double the DDR4 cache. So the 2 terabyte drive has 2 gigabytes of LPDDR4 cache memory on board. The 1 terabyte drive only has 1 gig, and it goes smaller from there for the lower capacity drives. And then obviously there's more NAND flash memory on this drive because it is a 2 terabyte model. But if you put this bad boy through its paces, you see some killer numbers like the other drives in the lineup. We're talking reads in the 3.5 gigabyte per second range with writes in the 3.3 gigabyte per second range. And interestingly, this drive also had the best latency of the bunch. So if you look at some of our iometer numbers, now we're talking minuscule differences because all of the high-end NVMe drives are fairly fast, but the best read and write latency, and it achieves its rated speeds in sequential transfers. If you check out Crystal Disk Mark, you'll see the drive did almost 3.6 in reads and 3.35 in writes, which put it at the top of the charts. There were a couple of anomalies where, like in Atto, where performance tapered a bit, and it didn't take the top spot in the trace-based tests. But they're all right there. We're talking a couple of points separate the fastest of the drives. So yeah, killer fast SSD from Samsung with plenty of capacity as well.
What are we talking about price point wise on this thing? Usually when you talk about the highest capacity drives, you command a little bit more of a premium. Is that the case here?
Yes. So not only because of the capacity, but because of performance. Right now, according to Amazon pricing, street pricing, the drive's about 24 cents a gigabyte. So you can score the 2 terabyte drive for about $488. And that does make it one of the more expensive consumer-oriented NVMe SSDs on the market. But it's also arguably the fastest. I mean, it may be the second fastest. So the 970 Pro series doesn't have a feature called Turbo Write, where it uses a part of the drive as an SLC cache. These drives have to do that because they're using TLC NAND. So if you exhaust that Turbo Write cache, writes kind of fall off. But we're talking, it's like you have to write a multi-gigabyte file to do that. So for most consumer workloads, it shouldn't matter. So yeah, there is a bit of a premium, but these drives are super popular and they're arguably among the best out there. So you can sort of command a premium with these guys.
Yeah. So you say arguably among the best. If you had to pick, price notwithstanding, so not an object. If you had to pick an SSD to drop into your system, and folks, this isn't sponsored. I'm putting Marco on the spot. Would you go with the EVO 970 EVO Plus? Is that fair? Would that be your pick?
My ideal setup would be an Intel Optane 905P for my OS and boot volume, and one of these for everything else. So throw your OS on your, on the Optane drive, where you'll get those awesome, all that awesome 4K random performance and consistency. But for all your bulk files where you might be moving tons of stuff around and you need those super high sequentials, then this guy. So like this would be awesome for like your Steam volume. It's got many, many gigabytes of games, and throw your OS and apps on an Optane, and you've got a super killer setup right there.
Yeah. No, we
money's no object though. Optane's more expensive, so.
Yeah. There's certainly better values in the market, slightly better values. I mean, I think what's the cheapest we've seen? Was it Micron or Crucial that came out with a series of drives?
Yeah.
Performance wise, not on the same level, but like sub 20 cents a gig or something.
Right. Last time I checked, the Crucial P1 was the least expensive per gigabyte. It was like 13 cents a gigabyte.
Yeah. Are you
Now,
gonna
funny
notice?
enough, I just say just quickly, I got two drives in, one from Seagate, believe it or not, and another from Kingston that are affordable gum sticks that are really fast. So I'm going to try to burn those reviews out. So those are more affordable, not quite as fast as the EVO Plus, but really nice drives nonetheless, and a much lower price point. So hopefully those reviews I can crank out quickly.
Boy, I tell you, SSDs and memory in general always seem to be squeezing, and especially in the land of storage, solid state drive technology continues to get to be a better and better deal. Do you need the kind of performance? And then we'll move on to the next one. Do you need the kind of performance of a 3.5 gigs per second read and write kind of drive like the 970 EVO Plus versus a drive like the Crucial drive? I mean, will the average enthusiast, let's just say, maybe not the hardcore, videographer or somebody like that, but the average enthusiast, do you need that kind of throughput?
No, it's the 4K transfers that are more important, but storage is like the bottleneck in most systems. So go with the fastest you can afford. What I will say, it seems like if you buy a drive from a reputable manufacturer and it was released like in the last 5 months, you almost can't go wrong. There's a lot of really good NVMe drives out there.
Amen. And with that, we will move on. Good stuff in the land of SSDs. Ooh, there goes my mic deciding to fall down as I'm speaking. Love that.
You don't need that.
Yeah. No, whatever. Good stuff in terms of value these days. And keeps getting better and better to be in the PC space. Well, let's move on and actually stay on the brand of Samsung and shift gears to mobile. Might as well. And talk a little bit something about a device from the good folks at Samsung that we sort of took our time coming out of the gate with. We started with the Samsung Galaxy S10 Plus, the big boy in the family. And we circled back to review the Samsung Galaxy S10e, every bit of flagship for less is what we say. And our good buddy Paul Lilly wrote this one up for us, put it through its paces. There it is right there in my midst when I was checking it out at the launch event in New York. But this is an interesting option in Android phones in the market currently because it brings basically everything that an S10 Plus brings to the party, with the exception of a couple of different camera options are a little bit less of an option in terms of cameras on the phone. But all the performance that you would expect from the flagship device. So Snapdragon 855 processor, 6 or 8 gigs of RAM, depending on the put up, 128 gigs of storage, 256 gig is also an option. And then you get a number of camera options as well. Here you've got rear-facing camera, 12 megapixel rear-facing wide angle with optical image stabilization and autofocus, and a 16 megapixel ultra wide angle shooter as well, and then a front-facing 10 megapixel shooter. Shoots 4K 60 frames per second. So decked out in terms of the camera accoutrements, if you will. But for me, this phone really strikes a nice balance from a cost and size standpoint. There's a lot of folks, when you get north of a 6-inch device, it's just a little too large. It's not as pocketable. Some folks, I mean, hey, let's just face it, especially the ladies, it's just big in the hand and awkward.
That's what she said.
Oh, you bastard. I knew you were coming with that. Yes, that's what she said. And gotta mix it up. And so those large devices, north of 6.25 inch displays are not always optimal for everybody. And so this is a 5.8 inch full HD 1080p display, but again, it's Samsung's amazingly excellent dynamic AMOLED display, and it's the Infinity O display. I don't know, John, if you can get that back up on screen, but has the bullet punch out for the camera on the front. There it is in Paul's hand. So super thin bezels, does have that little bullet punch out for the selfie cam, but that display, that AMOLED display from that technology from Samsung is some of the best, if not the best, on the market currently. The only other phone that I've seen compete, but again, is a big phone, is this guy right here. As you can see, blowing out the camera. Let me see if I can trim her down here. But this is the OnePlus 7 Pro. This is a big honking 6.7-inch phone, really big device. And at any rate, the Galaxy S10e just fits a little bit more manageable footprint with, a display that is just fabulous. And I think the only other device on the market, as I was mentioning there, is the OnePlus 7 Pro. Currently, I think with its 90 hertz AMOLED display, probably in some cases, depending on whether or not you're a power user and appreciate that 90 hertz. I don't know if you have to be a power user, but you like that extra crispy, so to speak. Maybe it's a little bit better than Samsung's AMOLED technology, but really, the Galaxy S10e. What can we say? I mean, in terms of benchmarks, it's right up there with any Snapdragon 855. It's pretty, on par with anything out there in this new crop of next generation phones, Android phones. And Samsung does a really nice job on the camera side of the equation. There's your benchmarks there, Jetstream, and that's a JavaScript benchmark. When you look at camera performance, it puts up some beautiful shots. Some folks say, with Samsung, you get a little bit more saturation, a little bit too saturated sometimes, versus, say, like a Pixel 3, where things are a little bit more natural. I tend to like the pop and the brightness of Samsung produced images in their camera array. I think it performs well. There's a couple of shots that Paul took, and it's rich and vibrant. I tend to think sometimes, although Pixel does a really good job of, capturing in low light situations, especially, I tend to think sometimes Pixel 3 and, Google Pixel phones in general look a little bit muted. And maybe that's because I like that extra saturation, that pop that Samsung brings. But it's definitely worthy of consideration if you don't feel like dropping $1,000 plus on a phone. This device, with its 6 GB of RAM setup and 128 gigs of storage, starts at $649. Let me see if I can confirm that on Amazon. Actually, currently right now retailing for $631. So you don't have to drop a K these days. And the OnePlus 7 Pro, by the way, another great value phone in my opinion, premium flagship. For $699, $649, I think, at its lowest configuration with 8 gig of RAM, 128 gigs of storage. But let's shift back to Samsung. What do you think about the Galaxy S10e, Marco? Other than that's what she said.
No, I think you hit the nail on the head. If you're not someone that needs just a massive giant phone, you don't care about the bells and whistles like the curved screen or the wireless charging from phone to phone, some of the extra things that the higher end S10 devices have. This thing is killer for the price, because you get that awesome performance from today's top end SoC. 6 gigs of RAM is plenty for 99% of the people out there, and it is a nice pocketable size with a good camera. There's minimal drawbacks, and lots to like for the money. So yeah, I think it's the 10es. If the size is for you, it's a good buy.
Yeah. It's definitely a better buy, especially if you're looking for something that's a little bit more pocketable. And this phone, when you consider, versus an iPhone 10, what you're getting horsepower wise in terms of the display versus like an iPhone 10R, for example. I mean, it's a great value. I mean, folks are used to paying $750 and up for Apple's latest bauble, and Android still has a better value proposition all around, I think, in some of these higher end phones. Once you get up into the upper mid range and flagship status of like a Galaxy S10 series or a OnePlus 7 series. So good stuff from the folks at Samsung. Their One UI, let's talk about that real quick. Marco, I know you've played with it a little bit lately. What do you think about their software setup before we move on here? Is it it used to be for me, even back in the S9 days, still a little clunky for me. What are your thoughts?
I think it's infinitely better than the reputation they used to have. I've been a Samsung user, except for my brief stint there as a Windows Phone user. I basically had everything from the Galaxy S2 on up to like the S6 or S7, and now I'm on a Note 8. And those earlier phones, that Samsung sort of deserved some of the bad reputation for bit rot and TouchWiz slowing things down. This Note 8, I literally haven't had to do anything since I set it up. It's got good maintenance routines built in. Battery life has been good. It doesn't get, laggy and weird. It just works. So yeah, there has to be some customization to handle all of the bells and whistles built into the phones. And I think Samsung has, it's not quite as clean as a Pixel or even like something from OnePlus, but their previous reputation should have been washed away at this point, because it's much better now.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned not quite as clean as some of the Pixel phones. I'm actually of the opinion now that Google's gone a little bit too far in spots with flattening the UI, such that things are, they love to make it, blindingly simple. Like it's just nothing on the screen sometimes for cues, and whether it be the home screen and having to do more swipe gestures with that or what have you. To me, they've dumbed it down a little too much, and maybe that's the geek in me that wants the knobs and the bells and whistles back. I don't know, but nothing crazy. I like what OnePlus does. I really like what they do. It's probably my favorite mobile OS right now, with the Oxygen OS that OnePlus puts up. But Samsung, I think you're right. I think they've upped their game, and that's probably a pretty close second for me. Good stuff. Check it out. The Samsung Galaxy SE. I just got through dropping that link in the chat, so check that out. We'll have it in the description as well as a link to our sponsor, the good folks at Gigabyte, who you heard. We'll get that out as well, a link there for the X570 AMD series boards that they're coming out with. Let's on that vein, in that note, talk about something in the gaming realm, PC gaming, PC master race, if you will. HP's Omen X Emperium 65 review. That was another one we put up recently. A massive 144 hertz 4K G-Sync gaming experience. There it is. Our good buddy Brandon Hill wrote this one up and did a nice job with not only getting this behemoth into his living room, but putting it through its paces. Has integrated NVIDIA Shield TV, Android TV on board, as well as G-Sync and 4K 144 hertz. I mean, holy mackerel. If you've got a powerful PC to drive it, impressive stuff. Marco, I know you actually drove it way back at CES in January. What were your thoughts back then of this BFGD? BFGD, is that the name? Big gaming display?
Anyways. Big format gaming display. So it's from the demo at CES, you can't help but walk away going, wow, that was sick. Like if you take all of the specs that a gamer would want on a screen, right? 144 hertz, G-Sync, huge panel, 65 inches, 178-degree viewing angle, multiple inputs, HDMI, DisplayPort, what have you. It's all in there. Includes a monstrous soundbar, should you want to use it. It basically hits all of the points you'd want in an awesome gaming display. Now that we've had it in-house, and this tends to happen when you get to review something versus being demoed something, at a trade show, you kind of figure out some of the idiosyncrasies. Now, Brandon dug in pretty deep. And then what you find is, because it's using an MVA panel, things do get washed out as you go, to the far extremes on either side. It's going to happen with some displays. It's a gaming display, so you're meant to be right in front of it. Maybe you can forgive that one. But what was kind of weird to me was it's not a television. It's a display. It doesn't have a tuner in there, but it does have a NVIDIA Shield built in. So it's designed to be used for media and entertainment as well. But switching between the Shield and gaming mode, you can't actually use the Shield remote. You have to go to the TV and switch inputs. And that's really kind of clunky. And I'm a Shield user daily. That's what I canceled cable, and my Shield is like the hub of my entertainment system. I use the voice control for a lot of stuff. And when I was editing the piece, I'm like, Brandon, are you sure? Can you check this? Can you check this? Can you hit the microphone and say this and see how it behaves? And he had like lots of the voice controls didn't work. You couldn't even shut it off with the voice control. So it was like, I want to love it because it's so cool. But for $5,000, there's some shortcomings.
For $5,000, you got to have a whole lot of perfect going on, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah, it's a tough gig when you have an ultra premium product like that. When you think about some of the 65-inch TVs that you can get on smart TVs from Toshiba and TCL for like $600. I mean, it's crazy how good a deal, large 4K TVs are these days. But this is a different ball of wax. This is 144 hertz. It's G-Sync. It's, it's a gaming monitor. Did we not come to the assumption, to the assertion or the summary or whatever, that this was a great gaming display, but perhaps not so great at TV viewing in general? What were there? I know there were a couple of gotchas on that front as well.
So if you're in front of it, it is great for media because it's a high-end 4K HDR panel, and it is a great gaming display for all those features that we've mentioned. And you bring up the lower price TVs. Yes, you can get a 4K HDR TV of a similar size, but what those don't get you are the higher refresh rates, plus the input lag is usually kind of crappy on TVs, even if you switch to game mode, whereas that's not an issue with a tuned gaming display like this, and input lag stinks. So that does noticeably impact the experience. It was just the somewhat clunkiness of the remote and navigating through the menus, switching between Shield mode and PC, and the off-axis viewing that sort of diminishes something like this. If it's just for you and you're rich, you're going to be sitting right in front of it, you'll probably freaking enjoy it.
One of those things. You don't have to be rich. You just shift your priorities. You don't have to eat for a couple of weeks, whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever. Yeah, no, that's interesting stuff. Yeah, good summary there. Thanks, Marco. Yeah, no, we see these. We heard about these TVs, or excuse me, these displays. Years ago from the folks at NVIDIA, and it seems like it took them a while to perfect the implementation. There's a lot of technology going on to get the display with this kind of quality for gaming, input lag, all that good stuff, and HP, you have to, applaud HP for actually coming to market with something it's here. It's the full, I guess maybe this is a fair, summary would be, this is the full implementation of what NVIDIA, sort of put forth as big format gaming displays, right? Is that a fair, probably about the best iteration of that technology we've seen so far?
Well, there was only two. There's this one and one from Asus, and the Asus one I don't think has shipped yet. So I mean, it was one of the I guess maybe Acer had one too. It was one of the
more, yeah.
Yeah, it was one of the vehicles that NVIDIA used to show it off. So yeah. Cool. All right. Well, let's shift gears out of that and step back into a time not forgotten, because retro these days is making a comeback for sure. The C64 as a full-size Commodore 64 reboot for the 1980s retro gaming. Just warms the cockles of your geek heart, doesn't it? There it is, the C64. Marco, this is your jam for sure. What do you think about this little fella, and what are the ins and outs and the implications? I mean, is all this technology for Commodore now sort of available, sort of public domain, that people can come out with this knockoff stuff? I'm wondering what the implications are there too. No, so this is licensed. Before I get to it, we had a question from Gregory Miller who was asking
Oh,
about
nice.
video reviews of a MSI specific notebook. Gregory, we haven't looked at that particular machine, but I sent a link to our notebook reviews. We do have two other machines based on NVIDIA RTX technology that we have reviewed, just not that particular MSI one. Now, getting back to the C64, this thing is pretty awesome. So, the last few months, I think maybe it's almost a year now, the C64 Mini has been out there. C64 Mini is a little tiny ARM-based, a little handheld
Yeah.
mini Commodore 64. The keyboard doesn't work. It's got a couple of USB ports on it, but it includes a bunch of games, and it does run a little C64 emulator. So if you have a flash drive, you can load other C64 programs. You can even program in BASIC just like you're in front of a C64, but you'd have to use a standard keyboard, yada, yada. This new guy is the full-sized version of the C64 Mini. So they're calling it the C64, taking Mini off of it, still an ARM-based emulator, but basically an exact replica of a full-sized C64 with the working keyboard and function keys. And they haven't disclosed all of this yet. I'm sure there's going to be a couple of surprises because there were some quirks with the Mini with, games that needed multiple joysticks and things like that. And also with how the menu is set up for loading your own games. So I'm going to assume that they're going to make that a little easier. And the joystick was notorious for breaking on the Mini. So they'll probably address that as well. But this guy is basically a C64 reborn with modern hardware and a much easier ability to get stuff on it. Like if you're a retro gamer, one of the hardest things of all these old systems is trying to get apps onto the old floppies. You end up having to use like adapters to SD cards and doing a bunch of wacky configurations to try to use modern interfaces to get onto these old machines. Something like this kind of addresses all that. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, you're gonna get into this? Do you go with those stunning HD graphics that they show in the demo? Is that your jam?
You know what I'm toying with the idea of doing. So as cool as I think the full size one is, I probably would be better off with a Mini. What I think would be cool, because I have a little spare machine over my left shoulder here for just in case my desktop, has an issue, and I never use it. So what I'm thinking of is parting with this little Sony touchscreen here, getting a cheap 4x3 monitor, because that's what all those old games would use, and integrating a C64 PCB into it, and then using a regular standard keyboard and mouse. So it would look like a modern, just all-in-one PC, but when you turn it on, it's a C64. So that would be a fun little project, but we'll see. That's if I had time to do stuff like that, and it has not been the case lately.
I know it for sure. Hey, it's amazing to me how these computers of yesteryear, game systems, what have you, Nintendo did it. Now Commodore's, or this company's coming out with a Commodore reboot. Sega's out there with machines. I mean, it's wild to me how, this is a real, market opportunity now, and, business is being, done on it, and it's a thing, like people love reliving the glory days of computing and sort of what they learned on as a youngin, I guess, and sort of strikes a chord. And, if you compare the graphics and the experience versus a current and high-end PC, obviously what we have now under our desk would blow one of these things away, but still there's something special and cool about it. What is that thing, Marco? It's just reliving the
it's 100% nostalgia.
Yeah.
For me, I'm also nostalgic about the trailblazers that made these machines, because stuff like this just didn't exist. They didn't know what people needed, didn't know what people wanted. And with the Commodore in particular, Jack Tramiel was like, I'm going to make a computer that's cheap, that everybody's going to want, going to undercut everybody, and just make it the best machine for the money. And that's why the Commodore 64 was the best-selling single model computer of all time. And that's why people still love it, and they still work. This is like kind of funny stuff to think about. the C64 came out, what was it, 1983, whatever. Never been an OS update and boots instantly.
Yeah,
It's just the computers don't behave like that anymore. You literally just turn it on and bang, you're ready to use it. So it's just totally nostalgia, but for me, it's also nostalgic because I kind of admire the trailblazers, Woz, and the guys at Commodore. It's just the cool stuff.
Absolutely. I'm right there with you. Good stuff for sure. Check that out. I put a link. I think I put a link in there. And yeah, looks like we may have a spammer. I don't know. Anyways, yeah, check that out at HotHardware. We've got a little news post on that, and I think they'll be going for sale shortly. Are they for sale now, Marco? Did you see that?
Yeah, no, they'll be ready for Christmas. Ready for Christmas.
There you go. They'll sell a few of those for sure. All right. Well, let's close up with something a little controversial, and then we'll finish up here. Study claims Google Chrome is total spyware, and you should run to Firefox now. Now, believe it or not, the guy that we cited as source in this article did not have an axe to grind, did not have some sort of affiliation with Firefox or what have you. Seemed like a fairly balanced report from a Washington Post journalist by the name of Jeffrey Fowler. And he basically did a study where he looked at Chrome's handling of data versus other browsers, and how it affects the experience from a privacy standpoint, how it handles cookies, how it's tracking you, and all that good stuff. And he said he took a deep dive into Chrome's handling of the data and also ran various experiments to see what really was underneath the hood. In one instance, he found that a week's worth of web surfing uncovered 11,000 or so requests for tracking codes that Chrome allowed by default, all of which Firefox, on the other hand, blocked automatically. And for example, we're quoting him now, Chrome welcomed trackers even at websites you'd think would be private. Fowler wrote, for example, he claims Aetna and the federal student aid website set cookies for Facebook and Google, which in turn told the tech giants whenever he would pull up an insurance and loan services, when he pulled up these pages, it would signal back to them, to Google or Facebook. He claims that Google sneakily signs him into this account. Now, we all know that when you're signed into Gmail, you're running a Chrome browser, you're logged into Google, and so Google is, of course, data mining wherever you go. And incognito mode doesn't always fix that tracking. It's not as simple as that. And there's other ways of shutting down and locking down Google's, Chrome's ability to track your data and where you've been, and your cooking your machine at various sites. But he argues that Firefox does this more by default to implement privacy protections that users, the average Joe or Jane, doesn't have to dig deep into the knobs and dials to tweak and make more secure for your privacy. Now, a lot of folks will also contend that this is a little bit of tinfoil hat, sort of mindset that, hey, as long as you're not, surfing the dark web for nefarious things, you don't have anything to worry about. What do you care whether or not you're being tracked basically for advertising and marketing purposes? And, there's a case to be made for that. But I think it's also, hey, some people just don't appreciate having big corporate in their shorts all the time. What are your thoughts about this, Marco? I wanted to get your opinion on it. And, honestly, I still run Chrome because it's just one of my favorite browser implementations. I've switched back between Firefox and Chrome. Don't really care too much that Google's tracking me. I don't know. Sometimes I get weirded out a little bit when I see something a little too instantaneous from my last search or even a mention or something. I mean, obviously, it's kind of creepy, right away when you start seeing related ads for, something you just looked at that's kind of specific to you. But I'm okay with it in general. How do you feel about this little claim that this Washington Post journalist is making?
Yeah, so I think there was lots of folks critical of this particular journalist. I'm not going to pretend that I know the intricacies of everything that he tested and if he's spot on with everything, but I'm going to tell two quick things. One, I'm going to tell a story. You and I were chatting one day through
Yeah,
you remember this, right? Chatting
I
through
do.
Hangouts, and you had somebody there. I think it was called hydro seeding. It was seeding your yard. Is that what it was called? When
Yes.
you have
Yep.
the seed. I had never heard that term before, never searched for it, never done anything related to it. And just because you and I chatted through IM about it, I started getting ads for it through Facebook. So and we were chatting through Google Hangouts. So obviously
Yeah.
Google was funneling data to Facebook back and forth, whatever. That stuff happens, right? The other
Yep.
thing to consider is Alphabet, Google, it's an advertising company. So if anyone's going to be a little lax as to what's being tracked and sold and moved around, is probably going to be Google, no matter what they want people to believe. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if
Right.
Chrome was shuttling more data. But again, I mean, as crappy as it is, I don't think we can expect to have our privacy online unless we're taking measures specifically to try to maintain it. So I think it is what it is. I'm with you there. I think it's just something we have to contend with.
Yeah, you make a good point. If you are concerned about your privacy online for any myriad of reasons, and it always cracks me up when DuckDuckGo. Gregor Miller says in the chat, that's if you want to use a private search engine, there's one for you, DuckDuckGo.
Yeah.
But it cracks me up when people jump into the comments of our site with an article like this, and they're like very passionate about, if you're on the web, you shouldn't, these companies are just, milking you and all this different stuff. It's like, well, yeah, that's the business model. One of the core businesses of Google is, as you noted, advertising. It's just comes with the territory. And it also pays for a lot of the services, frankly, that you're getting free on the internet. So I'm a little bit more with you. I'm kind of like, hey, it's part of the ecosystem. It's healthy on a certain level because it does fund the experience that you have on the web. It pays the bills, keeps the lights on. But by the same token, you make a good point. If you want to go and ensure your privacy online, if you're very passionate about it, like some folks are for any reason, it runs the gamut. You can be vigilant and turn the knobs and the dials, and you have to educate yourself on how to do that. You could maybe say that right now, I guess the gist of this, Marco, let me see if we can sum this up. Right now, if you wanted to just default have a more private browsing experience without having to dig into the knobs and dials to do it, Firefox may be a better option based on this guy's study.
Probably. Yeah.
and I've actually noticed that as well. And there are some cases, frankly, where I've seen in previous releases in Firefox where the default settings block and break functionality. I've seen Firefox break the comment section on our site, for example, which is core functionality of our property. It's not data mining you, just the discuss engine. Not I don't believe it is, anyways. But there's the session cookies. We'd have to look into that too. But there's session cookies and things like that keeps users logged in to comment, and it was just breaking it. It doesn't do it now. The current version that I'm aware of. So yeah, there's a happy medium there too. You can break web functionality with some of these default blockings that are in other browsers like Firefox.
Yeah.
So. Anyways,
I mean, if you ran a VPN and you cleared your browser history on exit, kept your anti-malware up to date, kept your system patched,
you're gonna be pretty good shape.
Right. Try not to stay logged into everything. Like, you don't have to go nuts to give yourself a little bit of extra, privacy. But if you have a driver's license and a credit card, and you're nothing's private. So.
I was going to say, what's the IT guy, the IT manager's claim about privacy? If you want something private and secure, disconnect from the internet. Just air gap it.
Exactly.
And even then, somebody can still snoop on you if they're in your house. So deal with it. Good stuff. Good stuff. Well, I think we've about hit all the high notes. We should wrap here. We're going to try and keep these a little bit more succinct for folks. We will try and be back more in this time frame. We're going to try and bring in Wednesday slots, Wednesday show times, a little bit closer to the 4 or 5 o'clock hour if we can find a spot where everybody can join us from the team at HotHardware.com. But yeah, we'll keep you posted. We'll be putting out a notice on the site and certainly to subscribers as well on our YouTube channel, where we would hope you would thumbs up and subscribe here so you can get notified when we go live. That way, when we do change, you get a heads up. You hit the reminder bell. That's important. You can find us at hothardware.com on the web, facebook.com/hothardware, youtube.com/hothardwarevids, Twitter, Hot Hardware. We're everywhere, and we'd love to hear from you. Please join us when you can. Marco, any parting words of wisdom?
No, everybody has put out some positive vibes for me that the test systems cooperate this week, because I need things to go smoothly to get all of this done. And other than that, I hope you enjoyed the show. Subscribe, come by the site, hang out with us, chat with us. We dig it.
We got to do a giveaway soon. We haven't
done
that.
We're going to blow our 20th anniversary year and not give something away.
Yeah, we got to do that soon. We got to have a little party with a couple of sponsors to give away some good gear to the folks. We used to do that almost every month at Hot Hardware on site. We will probably get back to that a little bit more regularly. That was fun to be able to give back to the community. But thanks for joining us, everybody, and we'll catch you in the next one. Thanks for stopping by.